All right, good morning. It is Tuesday, July 20th. We call this meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Madam Clerk.
Invocation and Pledge of Allegiance.
If you are willing and able, we would ask that you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation, which would be delivered by Pastor David Firstland of Zion Lutheran Church. And Pastor, you can make your way down to the podium at this time.
With a pledge or...
Apologies that we begin with the invocation and then the pledge. Yes.
Thank you, Mayor Whipple, and the prayer for today is discernment, as demonstrated by Jesus when Pharisees brought a woman caught in the very act of adultery and said, Moses says, stone her, what do you say? His discernment was not a yes or a no. He wrote on the ground. As they pressed him, he knew that if he said stone him, they would, and then take him to the Roman authorities and have him punished. If he said no, they'd take him to the Jerusalem council and have him punished for heresy. So he stood and he said, you without sin cast the first stone. They all left, and then he turned to the woman, said, any accuser left? She said, none. And he said, neither do I accuse you. Go and sin no more. Don't live a life of adultery. So discernment, let us pray. Almighty God and creator of the universe, give wisdom to each of Wichita's council members. May they see through dilemmas with true discernment. May their goal be to respect you, Almighty God. May they also seek the welfare of every citizen of Wichita. We seek your presence, dear Lord. You rule. We pray that your name would be honored, and we pray, Lord, that our lives would reflect you. Your will be done. Give us everything we need daily, and Lord, give us right hearts, hearts that are willing to be forgiven and to forgive others as well. Keep us from all evil. Yours is the glory, Lord. To you we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
Approval of the minutes of the regular meeting on July 13th, 2021.
Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes, and if so, is there any discussion? No discussion of said minutes. I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded by the Vice Mayor. Clerk will open a roll. Members cast the vote. Vote of 7 yeas, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Proclamation 2029 Kansas United Day.
Kansas United Day. For those who are here for the proclamation, please make your way to the front. Can everyone see this? Proclamation of the City of Wichita, founded in 1870. Whereas 2029 Kansas United Day provides an important opportunity to recognize the 10 players and coaches of the 2029 Kansas United youth basketball team who have worked tirelessly on their craft of basketball and have achieved the honor that no other youth basketball team from Wichita has ever achieved by winning the 2021 AAU 10U National Championship. Whereas, with the exceptional honor of winning the 2021 AAU 10U National Championship, the players and coach of the 2029 Kansas United have the unique ability to be admirable role models to other young athletes in the Wichita community. They have proved that hard work and dedication can help you achieve great things. Whereas the diverse ethnic background of the 2029 Kansas United team include Black, white, Asian, and Hispanic, proves that when everyone works together to find a common goal, lifts each other up, and loves one another, you can achieve great things. Whereas now, more than ever, it is important to recognize and support the positive pathway that youth sports can provide for children by teaching them exceptional work ethic, teamwork, respect, and dedication, which has been abundantly displayed by the 2029 Kansas United youth basketball team and their accomplishments of being the first ever Wichita team to win an AAU basketball national championships. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Brandon Whipple, Mayor of the City of Wichita, Kansas, along with the Wichita City Council, do hereby proclaim July 11th, 2021 as 2029 Kansas United Day. Do you have anyone take a picture? No? All right. No. Oh, someone in the back. Yeah. Oh, come on down. You can come forward. You only get like one chance for a picture, so.
First of all, I'm D. Garland. I want to say thank you to the City of Wichita and the Mayor for producing this day. On behalf of Kansas United 2029 and Kansas United as a whole organization, we want to say thank you. It's an organization predominantly for girls. We just recently started boys, ran by Gayla Soyes. Me being a worker for the city or a tutor for a school district, it kind of helped me to help these gentlemen with some of the parents that we have, a good collective unit. As you see, we are very diverse. We do have white, Asian, Mexican, Hispanic, and African American. But what these 10 boys have accomplished with the 6 you see here, or 7 you see here, is something that has never done before, which is extremely amazing. And honestly, they don't get the credit they deserve. And now we're finally starting to get it. But our youth here is really good, not just in basketball, but baseball and soccer and volleyball. We have a girls volleyball team that actually went to Vegas. That is pretty elite as well. But our youth is doing really good things here. They do get overlooked as well because a lot of the best teams here have to go travel, so we don't get the media coverage or things that you might hear about. But on behalf of Kansas United and the 2029 boys, to be exact, we want to say thank you.
Madam Clerk,
Jane Burns, Climate Action Plan.
moving into our public agenda.
I'm sorry?
So we're moving into our public agenda. So
Yes.
welcome.
My name is Jane Burns. I've been asking Wichita to create a board and a plan to ameliorate climate change. I've heard there's progress toward forming such a local, diverse, transparent sustainability board, but because we have seen nothing yet, we're continuing to ask. Today, I will offer 2 boosts to that process. One, the first on your list, there I left a lovely handout for you all. The first on that list is a link to the July 10th event at the very visible, mainstream, central, trendy NAFSCR Square, and an environmental wake-up event called Visions for Our Future, Youth Climate Action Rally. Those young grassroots adults were tied together mostly by their passion for our planet and for their own future. Grassroots means there's no full-time, well-paid lobbyists or developers, no deep-pocket financial backers or schemers. Unfortunately, there wasn't much local news coverage. Advertisers may not be so eager about the inconvenient truth and damage of climate change. Nevertheless, a week ago Saturday, there were motivated networkers for a clean future, such as Bag-Free Wichita, a solar energy company, Citizens Climate Lobby, and more. And the speakers, some of those speakers, those diverse, brave, articulate, and fact-based young speakers were from local high schools, plus WSU and Duke University. Some belong to the new local chapter of the Sunrise Movement, some to Kansas Youth for Climate Justice, some just standing up on their own. Here are a few highlights. Jason Lin, a university student of Asian descent, said, with all of Kansas' sunshine and wind, we have generous, ample resources to lead replacing fossil fuels and their emissions. Excuse me. Jonathan Balderas, who grew up in Hispanic North Wichita, said that energy emissions alter our air and water and disproportionately affect vulnerable residents, including Black and brown people. All speakers said our future is on the line. Full disclosure, they were pretty hard on decision makers who drag their feet to address this urgent topic, their climate future. So that's the first resource. And the second one on your list is the brand new, released yesterday, prodigiously researched 10 recommendations and 10 processes to reduce greenhouse gases. Individuals across the nation worked hard and thorough on a subcommittee of the nonpartisan National League of Women Voters. After you read that summary on your list, check the link at the bottom of that page to the whole report, plus examples of cities that have had successes with those measures. When you all do form a local, diverse, transparent sustainability board, it can build on that nonpartisan best practices that they've identified. I know that the city is short on staff and short on budget, but please get inspired and motivated to address our future. Please watch those earnest, young rally speakers, and please consider seriously the brand new national 10 recommendations and 10 processes to reduce greenhouse gases. And most of all, please form a local, diverse, transparent sustainability board as soon as possible that will customize an actual climate action plan for our own fine city. As always, thank you very much, each of you, and I'll appreciate any questions or comments any of you have.
See none. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Madam Clerk.
Michael McCorkle, Climate Action Plan.
Good morning, sir. Welcome.
Good morning. I am Michael McCorkle. I currently reside in District 5. Wichita is my hometown. Mayor Whipple, City Council men and women, and all Wichitans who are concerned about the future of Wichita. Today is the 5th time in as many months I address this elected body to urge the City Council to formally establish an independent sustainability board. Climate is global and weather is local, and both have changed dramatically in recent years due to climate change. No country or city is an island that can survive or thrive long as other parts of our planet suffer. Just like the pandemic, we are all in this together. Since I last spoke about climate change, out-of-control fires are ravishing western states. U.S. water reservoirs are at record low levels, but Germany is experiencing devastating floods, and poor farmers in Madagascar are starving. On June 29th, the small town of Lytton, British Columbia, 1,500 miles northwest of here, experienced record heat of 121 degrees. The next day, 90% of the town burned down. The U.S. has lost over 1 million acres of forest to fires in 12 states 2 months before normal peak fire season. Last year, Australia lost over 46 million acres of forest to out-of-control fires that killed an estimated 1 billion animals. All life on Earth is interrelated in interdependent ecosystems. Young people are looking to build careers and raise families in places that are paying attention to this climate change emergency and expecting elected leaders to start advocating real adaptation and mitigation actions before everyone's future becomes a worsening climate change apocalypse. I bet the starving farmers of Madagascar wish that climate change wasn't real. I visited Madagascar in 2006 and observed lemurs playing in lush tropical forests. Since then, most farmland has turned to desert in a decade because of climate change that is happening faster than scientists thought possible. I can share a video link showing the desperate situation of those fellow humans for any concerned Wichitan wondering how the other half is dealing with climate change. A mother sitting with her swollen-bellied children explains their hand-cleaned bugs for breakfast and cactus leaves for lunch menu. It is sobering to see that these climate change victims, true victims, because Madagascar produces none of the pollution that is ending its future habitability. A draft of the yet-to-be-published 2021 Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report, which summarizes the state of scientific understanding of climate change, was leaked to the press in France. Your children's future is described in the report. Quote, climate change will fundamentally reshape life on Earth in the coming decades, even if humans can tame planet-warming greenhouse gas emissions. Species extinction, more widespread disease, unlivable heat, ecosystem collapse, cities managed by rising seas. These and other devastating climate impacts are accelerating and bound to become painfully obvious before any child born today turns 30. The choices societies make now will determine whether our species thrives or simply survives in the 21st century as the 21st century unfolds. But dangerous thresholds are closer than once thought, and dire consequences stemming from decades of unbridled carbon pollution are unavoidable in the short term. The worst is yet to come, affecting our children's and grandchildren's lives much more than our own. We need transformational change operating on processes and behaviors at all levels, individual, communities, business, institutions, and governments. We must redefine our way of life, unquote. In a sobering understatement, it notes current levels of adaptation will be inadequate. And Wichita scored 99 out of the 100 largest U.S. cities in preparation for climate change. Wichita should get serious about climate change or watch the exodus of its youth because young people vote with their feet. I commend the city's initiative to have 90% of all energy needed by city buildings to come from renewable sources. This is a beginning, but realistically, so much more must be done. I do not expect this council to do anything bold or brave, but when you look at your children and your grandchildren, I ask you to consider what is more important, their future or business as usual. The choice is yours. Thank you for the opportunity to add my voice to this future-defining topic.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk.
Kellen Hagan's Climate Action Plan.
Hello, City Council members. My name is Kellen Hagans. I'm 19 years old, and I've been a Wichita resident for 13 years. And I'm here today to push you to continue the momentum you have behind the creation of a sustainability board. I go to college in Washington State, and I'm double majoring in environmental policy and politics and government with a minor in African American studies. My time spent in an area that puts a greater effort into its environmental impact has shown me how disconnected Wichita officials seem to be from their community. Now, I'm not a scientist, nor have I studied all of Wichita's legislation, so I'm not qualified to stand here and logistically tell you exactly the steps that you need to create, maintain, and effectively carry out a sustainability board. And honestly, that's not my job. But what I can do is help bridge the disconnect between officials and average members of your community. Citizens of Wichita are exhausted. I am exhausted. I am 19 and you have exhausted me. Why are you looking at me like that? Okay. To the citizens of Wichita, advocating in this city is like pulling a hangnail. It's daunting and painful, except for the hangnails that we pull go all the way up our arm, up my bicep, up my body. And when we continue to advocate, we keep pulling and pulling and pulling on these hangnails until soon we no longer have skin to contain our exhaustion. And it's no wonder why people don't want to live here. I'm going to tell you right now that young people do not want to live here. In high school, I don't think even one person told me that settling down in Wichita was a part of their future plans. Wichita is not a place that people want to go. It's a place that people end up. I know I don't want to be here. I'm leaving. And of course, there are multiple reasons for this thinking that aren't related to environmental change. But young people are just not seeing progress in this city. I mean, people have been coming here for months talking about how we want a sustainability board, and you're still deciding whether or not to create it, and who knows if it'll even create any change. Wichita has a legitimate potential and desire for solar energy, accessible recycling, and sustainable goods. And within the younger generation, local and sustainable goods are cool and trendy because they are by the community, for the community. And you should jump on these networks because people like them, and they help our communities safely grow in the long run. Now I'm going to shift gears a little bit. In the process of creating the sustainability board and future projects like it, you need to listen to the voices of the indigenous community, people in poverty, and those without homes. These groups of people are the most important voices to listen to because they are the ones who will be most affected by these environmentally related projects. Most of the people who hold power in Wichita are well-off white people. I mean, look at you guys. Council Member Johnson is the only person of color I see here. Wichita is not made up of solely rich white people, so don't carry out these processes like it does. Climate change is affecting different groups of people to various extremes. So go out and talk to impoverished Black communities and build relationships with indigenous tribes in this area, because any kind of work you do will mean nothing if it doesn't help the people who really need it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk.
Lindsay Dree, the need for trans protections in Wichita's non-discrimination ordinance.
Welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this morning. My name is Lindsay Drees. I live in District 4, and I have my Bachelor's of Science and Master's of Science in Biological Sciences from Wichita State University. I'm here to speak to you today regarding the non-discrimination ordinance, but more specifically, I would like to give a quick lesson on biological sex and how almost everything that was said about it in this room the last 2 weeks was absolutely wrong. First, let me start by saying that your biological sex refers to the biological characteristics of your body, but gender identity refers to how you identify, and gender expression refers to how you present and or interact with the world. Some people's biological sex and gender do not match, and this is often referred to as trans. However, there is another group I would like to speak about today whose gender and sex also mismatch, and these people are referred to as intersex. Biological sex is the only human trait we try to put in a binary box where there are only two choices. There are more than 2 hair colors, eye colors, heights, etc., and this binary designation is problematic because biological sex is very complicated. Biological sex is made up of 7 components: your genitalia, your chromosomes, your gonads, which are your ovaries or your testes, internal sex organs, hormone production, hormone response, and secondary sex characteristics such as body hair, voice pitch, breasts, etc. For a person to be male or female, all 7 of these components must line up perfectly. As I have alluded to in my opening statements, this is not always the case. Anyone who has a variation in one or more of the 7 characteristics that moves them out of male or female binary boxes is referred to as intersex. This group of people represents approximately between 1% and 2% of the total population, which actually happens to be about the same number of people who are born with red hair. Statistically speaking, someone you know is intersex, and more than likely it's several someones you know. Approximately 1 in 1,000 babies are born with genitalia so ambiguous it cannot be determined to be male or female. So why, if this is so common, do so few of us know about the existence of intersex people? One of the many reasons is that for many years, we have tried to shove intersex people into binary boxes and taught them their true biological sex was shameful. Children born with ambiguous genitalia were often operated on at birth and assigned a sex, gender, and surgically altered genitalia based on random chance or parental choice with no regard to how it matched the other 6 characteristics of their biological sex. Many of these children grew up to realize their sex assigned at birth did not match their gender identity and were unable to change their legal identifiers or were forced to jump through numerous legal hoops to do so. Another reason is that many people who are intersex do not know they are intersex until later in life, or they may never know at all. Karyotyping, which is looking at your chromosomes, is not a commonly performed test, but when it is done, it is not at all uncommon for people to find out that their sex assigned at birth is not their genetic sex. There are several reasons for this, including hormone production and response insufficiencies, chromosomal variations, in addition to what we know as XX and XY that you've all probably heard of. We see X, XXY, XYY, and XXX in addition to some other less common variants. And we also see specific point mutations in genes on the sex chromosomes. So what does all this have to do with the NDO, right? Well, based on the arguments made in this room the last 2 weeks, the main beef with the ordinance is the protection of LGBTQIA+ individuals. And you've all already heard how I feel about that, but what I didn't hear anyone else but myself say is this: intersex people and their existence is proof that sex and gender are a spectrum. They are born completely healthy and can survive and thrive with absolutely no medical intervention. They can and do live among us exactly as anyone else, and they have since the very beginning of time. They are the I in LGBTQIA+, but they don't get a lot of press. Many of them end up identifying as trans due to the poor medical decisions made at their birth, and as discussed, many don't even know that they are intersex. These are your friends and neighbors living life exactly the way they were born. But let me ask you, do you feel they would be protected from discrimination in this city after the last 2 weeks of testimony? Because I sure don't. Furthermore, they are the core evidence that biological sex isn't a binary, and gender shouldn't be either. Scientists don't know all of the reasons that someone is born trans, but when we accept that sex is a spectrum, it becomes very easy to understand all of the ways in which a person's genitals, the only thing we use to assign sex at birth, may not match up with the messages their brain is sending them about how to interface with the world, which is their gender. Our world is vast and amazing, absolutely mystifying in its complexity and beauty, and to try to strip that complexity down to a boring set of binary boxes in single shades of pink and blue is an absolute travesty. I beg of you to embrace the beauty and splendor of the world around us and protect the rights surrounding biological sex and gender already enumerated in the NDO as it was written. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Consent agenda items 1 through 13.
Every member had a chance to review the consent agenda, and if so, is there any discussion? If there's no discussion on the consent agenda, I'll make a motion that we pass it.
Second.
Motion has been seconded. Clerk, open the roll. Members cast the vote. The result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Report of Board of Bids and Contracts dated July 19th, 2021.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, City Council, Hannah Lang, Department of Finance, here to present the July 19th Board of Bids. First engineering bid we have is Stormwater Sewer number 758, Pump Station 7 and 9 repairs, reject all bids. Paving, Kellogg Crossing and Country Hollow, second edition. This item actually needs to be pulled for deferred to July, next Monday's Board of Bid date. 2020 Arterials Stormwater and Wheelchair Ramp Program Phase 2, Prado Construction for $187,950. 2021 OP3 CIP Arterial Concrete Street Repair Phase 3, PPJ Construction for $349,840. Roof replacement at Kansas Aviation Museum Phase 2, Gwaltney LLC for the base bid of add alternate 1, 3, 5, and 6 for a total of $777,100. Mattress and box spring recycling, offensive timber for $120,744. This is the purchasing procurement website, as well as the open request for proposals. That is the Board of Bid recommendations. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Questions for staff? See no questions. Discussion. Input from the public. Seeing none. Discussion from the bench. There's no discussion. Then I'll make a motion to accept staff's recommended action to receive and file the report, approve the contracts, and authorize the necessary signatures.
Second.
Motion has been seconded. Clerk, open the roll. So to 7 yeas, the motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
2022 Annual Operating Budget and 2022-2031 Capital Improvement Program.
Good morning, Mayor, members of the council. Bob Layton, City Manager. It's my pleasure to present to you today the recommended 22-23 proposed operating budget as well as the 10-year proposed capital improvement program. Before I get started, I want to thank Mark Manning, our Finance Director, Elizabeth Goltry-Wadle, and the entire budget staff for the work that they've put into this document. A lot of dedicated work, professional work, as well as long hours went into producing the documents that are in front of you today. Today I'm going to first talk a little bit about the budget process and how we got to this point, and then I'm going to go over the basic, provisions of the recommended budget and CIP, and then talk a little bit about the state law as it applies to the budget process, and then finally outline the ongoing calendar for you. Reminder, a few years ago, the councils came to me and said, we'd like to have more feedback on the front end of the budget. And starting last year, we, I think, used a much more aggressive retreat approach with you. And we continued that this year. You have already been through 3 retreats in April, May, and June. And if you remember, the May and June meetings were roll up your sleeves and provide pretty solid guidance to us as we prepared our recommendations for the operating budget for next year. Our engagement process also included taking some budget concepts out to the district advisory boards. We had a social media town hall to drill down on ARPA priorities, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. And then you also asked that one of our budget hearings include an evening meeting, and that's scheduled for August 5th. You also asked last year that we add an additional hearing, and so we will actually have 4 hearings starting with today's budget discussion. The proposed budget and the proposed capital improvement program, CIP, can be found online at wichita.gov. So let's talk a little bit about the budget and how it's evolved since our initial discussions with you in April. If you remember, we projected that 2021 would actually turn out to be a little better than we projected, but that anticipated that we would have a significant number of frozen positions and we would not be filling any of those, and that we would continue to have reduced service levels in certain programs. Not only did we anticipate a difficult revenue situation from sales tax revenues, but also from a reduction in interest earnings and also in fees for services. Again, we started to turn the corner in early 2021, and so that's why we had projected that we'd be in a better position than originally anticipated. However, that was not going to be sustainable, and when we sat down with you in April and May, we showed significant deficits in 23 and 24. Since that time, we've had a little more experience going through and watching our revenue situation. Our sales tax revenues continue to improve, and our property valuations for this year that will actually be used for the property tax generation for next year, 2022, is better than what we had anticipated. So property values have improved from a year ago. We're also seeing a slow growth in activity-based revenues as well, which includes the transient guest tax and our charges for services. And then the good news is that we have received our ARPA funding, which exceeds $70 million, and that will help us deal with not only our financial deficits that are projected in the future, but also allow us to restore some services, and I'll talk about that as well. A reminder that the underpinnings for our budget comes from our mission statement. First component is we want to be an exceptionally well-run city, so that deals with our administrative services. We want to keep Wichita safe, grow our economy, build and maintain our infrastructure, and provide conditions for living well. And these aren't just cute phrases, but this is reflective of what we've heard from the community as we've gone out and talked on a regular basis with neighborhood associations and other groups about what's important to them when it comes to the provision of city services. Let's talk a little bit about ARPA. The good news, again, with the revenue that we'll receive, that we have received already this year and will receive next year, is that it's allowing us to fill vacant positions. In fact, we are anticipating that we will fill approximately 140 vacant positions. We prioritize those to reflect services that were important to our community and where we were concerned about service levels. That included parks and parks maintenance, animal control, and street maintenance, and library, excuse me. We're also going to be able to stabilize the general fund, as I mentioned, in 23 and 24 from the use of those funds. We're also using some of the ARPA funds for capital projects, which we talked to you about, received some guidance during the last retreat, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And then the council has tentatively put aside $20 million for community initiatives. I also want to talk to you about the feedback we've received from the public and indicate that there may be an interest or a need for the council to rethink those priorities based on the feedback we received from the public. Drilling down deeper on the use of the ARPA funds, through the budget planning period, which starts at this year in 21 and goes through 24, we're anticipating a little over $14 million for the rehiring, the filling of the 140 positions. We actually think we may be able to fill a few more over a period of time in areas, again, where we're concerned about service levels. So there may be, for instance, some more positions in street maintenance that will be filled. We also have two initiatives, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, that account for $4.5 million over a 3-year period. These are initiatives that the council endorsed at the last retreat. That are public safety related. There'll be $23 million over the period of time through 2024 for the financing of infrastructure projects. That includes 2 police stations, a fire station, improvements at 4 branch libraries, and the upgrading of the fire station alerting system. Again, we believe that those projects are all in alignment with the ARPA goals and restrictions. Recognizing that the community has struggled because of the pandemic, the council put aside $20 million to deal with what we would call economic impact initiatives, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. And then in order to get us through 23 and 24, $10.7 million would be used for general fund support. Here's a quick overview of our total budget And if you'll look on the left-hand side, the pie chart there, you'll see that our number one revenue source is charges for services. And that's 35%. 20% of our revenue comes from property tax. Charges for services, if you remember, the primary source for that are sewer and water utility revenues. On the right-hand side, you'll see how that money is to be spent. 36% goes towards salaries and benefits, 25% towards debt service, and then the other categories for the remainder. Let's talk about the general fund budget, which is what the public probably spends the most time looking at because it funds our ongoing operations. Our number one revenue source is the property tax at about 38%. Sales tax is 13%, and a portion of that, actually this portion of the sales tax goes to help support ongoing operations, and that was part of the referendum years ago when the sales tax was approved. And then you'll see that 19% of our revenue comes from franchise fees. Vast majority of our expenses in the general fund go to support salaries and benefits. And as you know, that places some limits on our ability to make changes in the budget, especially during hard times when we need to reduce our expenses. That really the only way we can do that is by making adjustments in our workforce. However, luckily we're not in that position primarily because of the ARPA assistance that we're receiving. We're proposing that the budget would be supported through property tax revenues generated from a proposed mill levy of $32.749, which is equal to this levy that you used for the 2021 adopted budget. Our general fund reserves are estimated to be in 2021 at $41 million, or 16% of expenditures. This is an attempt to address concerns that were expressed by rating agencies about the city's financial position, and so we're trying to stabilize or increase our reserves during this period of time. We believe that will be a productive move. And we've also tried to address some of the changes in our operations that were necessitated by the onset of the pandemic in 2020. One of the things I do want to say is that we learned some lessons during the pandemic that I think actually made us a better business. And I just want to go through a few of the things that we anticipate we'll continue doing as we go forward, because I think they allow us to provide service better to our residents. In the library, we're going to continue the curbside pickup service that was very popular. We're also going to increase the amount of funds that we put towards electronic materials because those have proved to be very popular with our patrons. We've improved our docket, our court docketing process so that we actually are able to more efficiently move cases through the court system. We are using remote probation check-ins, which that system has actually worked very well, and it keeps people from being required all the time to come in and check with their probation officer. As you know, and you've all been a part of, we've had remote meeting options, and we're going to continue to use hybrid meeting options where they are appropriate. And we have vastly improved and expanded our electronic payment system. Let's pivot from the operating budget for a minute to the CIP. Again, a few years ago, the council wanted to make sure that you were presented both the operating budget and CIP at the same time, so you could strategically look at the documents and also look at not only the financial aspects, but how the projects in the CIP would line up with some of the programs in the operating budget, and to make adjustments where appropriate, where alignment was necessary or better alignment was necessary. The idea, again, is to follow the debt metrics that were adopted by the council probably over 10 years ago to make sure we have a sustainable financial or funding system for the CIP through the 10-year period. And then we want to stay consistent with the direction we received from you in the past on various projects and policy initiatives. If you look at the CIP, it's almost a $2 billion document. or funding plan for the 10-year period. Significant amount of revenue to support the CIP comes from the sewer and water utility fees. However, the local sales tax provides significant dollars for roadway improvements or street improvements. We also have a sizable amount of money, $311 million, that it comes from special assessment revenue to pay off special assessments for the construction of improvements in new subdivisions. And then we have $282 million that pays for what we all consider to be our traditional general obligation debt. How we spend those dollars is reflective of how the money is actually generated. In the slide that I shared with you previously, significant amount of our expenses are for the water and sewer utility systems. And as you know, we're building a new water plant, and we anticipate to be making significant improvements to our sewer system, and that's reflected in the pie chart you're looking at here. And then again, over $300 million going to the construction of special assessments. And then I should highlight that over $400 million will be spent in streets over the next 10 years, which has been identified by the community and by the council as one of our top priorities. The debt service fund mill levy rate will remain at its existing 7 mills. The water and sewer projects that are in the CIP will be consistent with the pro formas that you've been presented over the past several years, and our GO debt levels are consistent with the guidelines and meet the benchmarks that were established by the council. The one benchmark that we always like to refer to is the GO at large debt service as a percentage of property tax revenues. Council has adopted a benchmark at 67%. You'll notice that the previously adopted CIP came very close to meeting that 67% in 2029. We've been able to bring that curve down a little bit, and actually that's good news because that provides the council capacity going forward. So this will give you more flexibility as you look at capital projects in the future. Let's go back to, let's go to a highlights. We'll go back to our mission statement, and in each category of the mission statement, I want to talk about both operating budget and CIP highlights. The first thing I want to recognize is that we're in the process of conducting an optimization review and study in the fire department, and this budget provides $1 million to start implementing the recommendations that will come from that plan. We also are going to retain 12 positions that are currently grant funded, but the grant funds will expire here, in the, can't remember the year, in 22, and the operating budget will assume responsibility for those salaries. The CIP has sufficient funds to construct 4 new patrol stations or substations. And as I mentioned before, ARPA will be partially funding that station work. We took to heart some of the recommendations that came out of last summer's discussions about police services and providing more support for what our police officers are confronting day in and day out in the field. So we have a grant that will allow us to add 2 support positions that come from the Kansas Department for Children and Families to deal with some domestic violence and other issues that our officers confront. And we've just recently completed an agreement with ComCare to have a social worker embedded in the police department, again, to deal with some of the underlying causes for the criminal activities and behavioral problems that the police department and police officers observe on a daily basis. CIP also anticipates replacing 6 fire stations over the 10-year period, and as I mentioned before, we'll be using ARPA funding for one of those positions, or one of those stations, excuse me. Also, we're using ARPA funds to create a violence interrupter program. As you talk to people in the community, you'll know that there's significant concern about the rise in violence. This isn't confined just to Wichita, but we want to do something creative here to adopt a concept that has worked in other cities in this country, that will allow us to get deeper into the community and to deal in a creative way with not just those who have been involved previously in violence, but also those who have the potential to be, and see if we can't use some different strategies in order to keep that activity from occurring. We've also added 7 police officers, which will conclude the phase 2 of the staffing study. In terms of the category of growing our economy, we are, I think I mentioned to you before, we're working with a group called Quali to establish a small business portal here to make it easier to maneuver through not just our city regulations as they pertain to small business, and hopefully those aren't real significant, but also to provide the kinds of resources that small businesses need in order to be able to be successful. And that includes such things as accounting services, legal services, to provide them with information on how they can receive those services, especially as they are startup businesses. Really big news here, and that is that we will be concluding the Gilbert and Mosley TIF during the next year, and that's a pretty significant accomplishment for this community. As you know, that converted Old Town and made it a viable district, entertainment district, and an economic development generator. And we'll still have the district, we still have remediation responsibilities, but the TIF will no longer be collecting the TIF. And that will free dollars not just for the city, but also for the other taxing jurisdictions. A great success story, and kudos to all of those who were in our positions before for adopting such a unique program. Then we also are funding some projects in our growth corridors or growth areas, and that includes the West Street corridor, which opens up industrial ground, or makes it easier for industrial ground to be utilized on the west side and south side, and then also to address issues that have been very problematic for not just commuters, but also for economic development activity, primarily trucking in our area, and that is the improvements to the North Junction. I want to thank, probably at this time need to thank our congressional delegation and also our Kansas Department of Transportation for being such great partners, and also, I'm sorry, Sedgwick County for being such great partners in that project. Talking about dependable infrastructure, which is a nice continuation from the last bullet point, the council has continued to identify street maintenance as a priority, and this 10-year program in the CIP designates $163 million for construction of streets and improvement of streets. I already mentioned the work that we'll be doing for improvements to our sewage treatment plant, and then something that has been overlooked for too long, the condition of our city facilities. Over the 10-year period, we have $37 million allocated for improvements and upgrades at our city buildings. In the category of living well, I've already talked about the additional dollars that we'll be putting into electronic library materials, but we also are restoring funds for traditional library materials. If you remember, during the pandemic, we were forced to cut back in our tree trimming and planting programs, and those will be restored based on your guidance during the retreats. We are recommending merging cultural arts into park and recreation, and hopefully positioning ourselves by doing that for an ultimate merger with Sedgwick County and their park department, as well as some of their cultural arts services. And then in the capital improvement program, we have 3 quality of life improvements that are being recommended, new, and that, first of all, it would include improvements at South Lakes, for a pickleball complex that would be a regional and possible national attraction. talk about implementing the first phase of the LW CLAP master plan, and you'll receive a presentation on that master plan next week. And then also to take advantage of private financing opportunity for improvements to McAdams Rec Center. Staying in the living well category, we have talked to you about the need to improve what we do from a management and maintenance standpoint in our golf system. We think we can bring a better experience for our customers if we were to work with a private management firm. And so there's an RFP that's been prepared and is currently being reviewed by the Golf Advisory Committee and others, and hopefully that'll get on the street in the near future. I'll make sure that a copy of that, as it gets finalized, is shared with the City Council as well. And then following your adoption of a new public art ordinance, $12 million is designated for public art and capital projects in the CIP. Here is the proposed calendar for the adoption of the budget and the CIP. Today is your first introduction to the recommended budget. And August 5th is the evening meeting that I referenced that you'd asked for last year. And then August 17th is a second or a third hearing, actually. Excuse me. And then we're anticipating that you would adopt the budget on August 24th, as well as the capital improvement program. Before I finish my presentation, I do want to talk about the statutory requirements associated with the budget, especially one that deals with revenue neutral rate provision that was adopted by the legislature earlier this year. Under the new requirement, our tax dollars, the property tax dollars collected, are to remain constant from the previous year. So in other words, if you were, so it's basically a tax lid that doesn't take into account any new construction, annexation, or expiring tax exemptions, all that were included in the previous tax lid. So there's no adjustments that are made. So what that means is that if you were to stick with that hard tax lid, we would have about, if I remember correctly, over $4 million of revenue that we would not be able to collect. Now, the council has always put its own lid in place, and that is that you have frozen for the last 28 years our mill levy. So we've had a flat mill levy during that period of time. This budget anticipates you would continue that. You're not prohibited from doing that under the new law, but the law does require you to then publish notice of your intent to go above that hard, flat tax limit. Mark Manning, who is our resident expert on this, will be able to talk in more detail if you want to ask any questions regarding that. But we're recommending that you indicate for both the city's operating budget as well as the budget approved for the SMID that we will be going above the limit, and in both cases we'll be freezing our levy at the previous year's level. So today what I'm asking for you to do is establish a public hearing for the operating budget and the CIP for August 24th, authorize publication of the public hearing notice, authorize notification of our indication to exceed the revenue neutral rate, and to receive and file the proposed capital improvement program. I will remind you that today you'll be locking in the maximum budget and the maximum property tax levy. So in the future, if you want to make changes to the budget, you'll need to make changes in expenditures. So in other words, let's say you wanted to add $1 million program, you'll need to reduce something else by $1 million in order to be able to fund that. So today you are establishing your limit in terms of the level of operating expenditures and revenues. With that, I'd be glad to answer any questions. I also have budget staff and finance staff here to address your issues.
Questions?
Councilmember Bluebog.
Thank you, Mayor. Bob, I know we've had a lot of discussions about Squad 17 out west, and with all the news we've been seeing about EMS and response times and stuff. Is there any changes to that squad out there that you know of?
I don't want to project what will come from the study, but I've looked at some preliminary data, and I do think we're going to have some adjustments. And again, I don't want to speak for the chief, but in what I've been looking at, I do anticipate some west side adjustments once that study is complete. I can't tell you for sure where equipment will go, and either where staffing or equipment will go, or even recommendations for new stations. But I do sense that we'll have some changes out west.
Will you remind me of that date again?
Is Tammy here? We anticipated to get that done this year. I just don't remember and she actually has been able to get the data into the system quicker than what we anticipated, so I don't have a revised date, but I know it'll be done before the end of the year.
Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions? Bob, can you talk a little bit about the directive to increase the base pay of employees to at least $15 an hour?
Right. So the council gave me direction that the vacancies that we were filling, all those positions needed to come in at $15 or higher. That came out of the retreat. So we've built that into this budget. We've also then built in an allowance as part of our collective bargaining process to work with each of our units to come up with what they believe is the fair approach to implementing a wage increase, whether it's $15 or what they define as an affordable wage. But we're in negotiations with some of our unions right now, and that's one of the issues that we'll talk about. It doesn't apply to all the unions, for instance, in police. I don't think that's an issue, but we're in the process of negotiating with SEIU right now, and that's on the table.
Okay, so if SEIU employees don't take the $15 an hour, it's because they're the only ones who aren't paid at the base of $15 an hour. It's because of the negotiations with the union.
Yes. I don't want to presume that that's where we'll be. We're having good faith negotiations on it.
Okay. Also, when you mentioned the RFP for private management of golf, I recall a conversation we had earlier, and perhaps I should have followed up, but my understanding was golf was going to continue as is for this upcoming year, that we weren't going the route of private management. I'm just wondering if that changed or...
It will continue this way all through 2021. The park board has directed us to go ahead and put an RFP together, but it wouldn't be for this year, it would be for next year.
Okay. Further questions?
I apologize. There was one thing I forgot to mention, and I had the notes here. Regarding the feedback we received from the public so far on ARPA, we've had, I just wanted to tell you, we've had strong support from the community on doing something on affordable housing, on workforce development and training, and on small business development. We have not received very positive comments or what I would consider to be any kind of level of strong support for smart manufacturing and digital transformation. One of the ARPA requirements is that we follow, that we address community needs as they're identified by the community. And so my recommendation is that we reconsider that category as we go forward. You continue to designate $20 million for initiatives, but we talk about how that $20 million will be utilized going forward. At this point, I could not in good conscience recommend funding for that initiative based on the feedback that we've received to date on community priorities.
Councilmember Fry.
Thank you. And to clarify, we have over 4 years to spend that ARPA dollars. It doesn't have to be in this budget year. So it's not
correct.
20 million that we're talking about right now. It could be spread out.
Right. We put it in one lump sum for now, but you're correct. That can be spread over a 4-year period.
And it could be used back for more public infrastructure or some of the other categories that we identified.
Yes, and I will mention that there has been a lot of discussion, and especially in the public feedback process that the county has been utilizing, a lot of discussion about mental health issues, homelessness issues, and so that may be something the council will want to take a look at as well. But yes, you're right, you have flexibility as long as it's consistent with the requirements of ARPA.
Since you mentioned the county, have they identified community initiatives for their 100 million that they're getting for ARPA?
Not yet. They're in their process still. I think they're in the focus group stage of their community engagement process.
Other discussion?
Thank you.
Their input from the public. Good morning and welcome.
Morning. The 2022 proposed budget is on the agenda today. The public will have a limited amount of time to wade through hundreds of pages of documents to see how you are spending taxpayer money, or how you claim to be spending taxpayer money. The message you send to the public is questionable, and I question how much of the budget is accurate. I have found numerous errors in city finances, CAFR information that was incorrect, general ledger entries that were erroneously labeled, and debt schedules that were inaccurately labeled. So I question whether taxpayers are seeing the true picture of how our tax money is spent. Are the narratives written really accurate? The debt service fund doesn't mention the transient guest tax as a source of revenue. Why not? You're using the transient guest tax to pay off 20-year bonds for the Waterwalk Fairfield Inn. The Tourism and Convention Fund also doesn't mention supporting private development. Why not? You are using this fund to pay off Jim Korak's Fairfield Inn. That's private development. The tax increment financing funds don't mention supporting residential development. Why not? You created the Riverside TIF to fund residential home development and infrastructure upgrades. The city manager's policy message, is it accurate? He states renewed emphasis on efforts to outsource management of city facilities, not only to reduce costs, but to enhance the customer service. Enhance customer service. Is that what you heard from the women who spoke to you on the agenda about the awful customer service of the Wichita Ice Rink Center? They told you about broken scoreboards, plywood covering holes, mold on the walls, broken lights, and broken shower heads. They documented the decline of this public building for the past 8 years. And did any of you respond to their complaints? I don't believe they've had an enhanced customer service experience. So why do you allow City Manager Layton to write that private management will result in enhanced customer service? Who are you kidding? Once the contract is signed for public buildings to go private, maintenance can continue to be deferred without a vote by citizens. The city manager goes on to state that the city's value influenced the preparation of the budget. Core values of trust and service are supposedly built into the budget. But in fact, I see the same misstatements and errors that I pointed out to you with the 2021 budget. You haven't changed anything that was wrong last year, and you repeated the same errors again. You still claim to have an internal auditor screening materials for projects with fees greater than $150,000. Why do you say this? You're still in violation of your own administration regs. And the debt management policy is still incorrect too. 20 years in general obligation debt is actually funds for more than stormwater and water utility projects. $4 million of this debt is for Jim Korak. It was labeled stormwater utility in the comprehensive annual financial statements, but it's for his hotel and water walk. I learned in elementary school that if you made a mistake and the error was corrected, you didn't go back and make the same mistake again, but you continue to print the same mistakes in the budget. How does that demonstrate trust as a core value? And a big deal is made of public engagement, as if public comment and resident engagement was the most important factor in creating the budget. That's not true either. What happened to the public engagement you received regarding private management of our golf courses? What happened to the public engagement you heard in a city council meeting about the Wichita Ice Rink Center? And what happened to the public engagement you received regarding private management of Century 2? Why was a summary of the comments not important to share? It appears that you selectively use public engagement when it fits your purpose. Don't write about comments, keep them hidden. Seems to be the way you really build public engagement. Has City Manager Layton and his staff put together the best proposal for our public buildings and facilities? Knowing time is short, I've prepared a list of questions from the brief time I've had to review the city budget documents, and I'll be back later. City Manager Layton states that outsourcing management of city facilities will reduce cost. How exactly will customer service be measured? What comments will be published? He believes private management is going to improve our public facilities. How will that be determined? How are you going to measure it? The capital improvement program has several pages evaluating projects, but I want to know if it is truly accurate with the guidelines, like the 20-year bonds that went to Jim Corrick's Fairfield Inn. Local sales tax, luckily, were created in 1985 to reimburse us for our property taxes. That's actually why local sales tax were created. I'm thankful that the Kansas legislation changed the tax lid requirements so that you have to file with the county when you're actually charging us on our assessed values and property taxes. So I want to know where you're going to publish the fact that you're exceeding this limit with the county. I'm out of time, but I have more questions, and I will be submitting them to who to get answers on the budget. I'm guessing City Manager Layton, is that correct?
Yes.
Thank
But
you.
I'd like to be CC'd on that.
What?
I would like to be CC'd on that if that's okay.
That's fine. Thank you.
Manager Layton, can you speak to, are there any known mistakes? Or just speak to I guess, the presentation. There was a concern about mistakes that were pointed out last budget that might have been put into this budget. Also, I think that a response to measuring of customer experience, customer service would be great as well.
I'll speak to the second piece, and I'm going to ask the Finance Director, Mark Manning, to talk about the first. In terms, and I've indicated this before to Ms. Reset, you have to learn from your successes and those things that have not gone well. And we are in the process now of looking at changes in our operation and management of the ICE Center. We recognize that there's some issues that need to be addressed, short-term and long-term in that facility. But as we look at, for instance, the RFP and the process with Century 2, we're setting up maintenance standards and expectations in what I think will be a much tighter contract. And I think we will see enhanced maintenance of the facility as well as an enhanced customer experience. And so far we've shared information with the user groups and they seem to be pleased with the direction that we're headed. But ultimately the council will make that decision when we bring something to you. I'm going to ask Mark to address some of the issues that came up on the accuracy of the document.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Mr. Mayor. How are you? We've met with Ms. Reset in the past several times, and she is correct in that she has found things that were not completely accurate, but I guess what I would tell you is most of that is in staff working papers, not in public documents. In fact, staff materials that are just notes that we have in our financial system for the most part. As far as the debt level goes, I think what she's doing is she's confusing guidelines that we have for how we issue debt with council policy decisions. For example, she's correct. We typically, our guidelines are 10-year GO debt for at-large projects, 15 for stormwater. But we have issued longer-term debt. Again, that's the prerogative of the city council. So, she's correct in what our guidelines state, but I wouldn't characterize it as a mistake or an inaccuracy if the council chooses to issue debt in different terms than our guidelines. So.
Any other questions? Further public comment on this item? Johnson moved his hand. I thought he was going to push the button, but he wasn't. Okay. So if there's no further public comment or discussion from the bench, Vice Mayor Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. You hadn't said back to the bench yet.
Oh, sorry. Bringing discussion back to the bench. Vice Mayor Johnson.
Just real quick, I just want to say thank you for all the work it took on this and presenting this today. And I also appreciate you taking into account the feedback and direction council gave for an evening meeting. That's something that I've been hearing about quite a bit and actually just had a comment on social media yesterday, and people, I think, will appreciate that. So I just appreciate adding those steps in for engagement with the community.
Further discussion from the bench. All right, there's no further discussion, then I will make the motion to take staff's recommended action to set the public hearing on a proposed 2020 budget, including the tax increment financing districts and the self-supporting municipal improvement districts, and the recertification for the Union Station TIF fund for August 24, 2021. Authorize publication of the formal public hearing notice, approve first reading of the ordinance for the general tax levy for the City of Wichita TIF District and SSMID, authorize staff to make any technical adjustments required to comply with the state statute, and set a maximum amount of tax levied for the City of Wichita at $129 or $129,165,203, based on anticipated mill levy of 32.749 mills and an estimated assessed valuation of, is that billion or million?
Billion.
3944096063. Set the maximum amount of taxes levied for the self-supporting municipal improvement district at $698,186, based on an estimated levy of 6.713 mills and an estimated assessed valuation of $104,513,800, and authorize staff to notify the Sedgwick County Clerk of the intended to exceed the revenue neutral rate for the City of Wichita taxing funds and the SSMID taxing fund. It is also recommended that the City Council receive and file the 2022-2031 proposed capital improvement program. That was the longest motion I've ever made. Is there a second?
I have a friendly amendment.
Okay.
Just because you said it verbally. My friendly amendment is to set a maximum amount of taxes levied for the City of Wichita at $129,165,203.
Friendly amendment to the motion.
Second.
It's truly friendly. And with that, that motion has been seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? If there is none, then clerk will open the roll. Members cast the vote. So of 7 yeas to 0 nays, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Public hearing and request for a letter of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds, Air Capital Flight Line, LLC.
Good morning, Mayor, members of the Council. Scott Rigby, City Manager's Office, here today to talk about Air Capital Flight Line, which is out in southeast Wichita, technically an industrial district, but out close to District 3. Air Capital Flight Line was established in 2014. A few developers partnered to acquire the former Boeing facility south of Oliver between 31st and 47th. This is immediately to the east of the Spirit Aerosystems facility. Here's a map showing Spirit on the west side of the street of Oliver. On the east side is the former Boeing facility. Now it's Air Capital Flight Line. Air Capital Flight Line built 144,000 square feet of manufacturing back in 2019, called Building 39K for Spirit, and today they intend to add additional 55,000 square feet to that 39K building. The request from Air Capital Flight Line, who would build the facility on behalf of Spirit, would be requesting a letter of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds in amount not to exceed $8.9 million, requesting 100% property tax abatement and construction sales tax abatement for eligible construction materials. Air Capital Flight Line, in consideration for Spirit, projects to add 150 net new jobs with wages in excess of $100,000. Here's just the estimated 1 year 100% tax abatement value, total of $230,693. As required by our economic development guidelines, we do a cost benefit analysis. WSU does that for us. As you can see, the return is quite well, 44.73 to 1. And as you see, going on down, quite significant. Just a couple comments before we get to the recommendations. Spirit's been working hard during this pandemic to come back from the challenge of the pandemic. They've been expanding their activities, not just on commercial aircraft, but also defense and other activities. So as we talk to them and discuss the value of this project, we think it's a good project because it diversifies their workload, which means more stability in the future for future challenges. With that, I will say Adam Pogue from Spirit is in attendance and is happy to discuss any questions you may have for Spirit. Our recommendations as staff is to recommend that the City Council close the public hearing, adopt the resolution of intent, and authorize the necessary signatures. With that, I stand for any questions or.
Councilmember Fry.
Thank you. Scott, I know in the past when we've asked for these, it's been included in the report, but I don't see it here. We do show the value of the property tax abatement, but we don't show the value of the sales tax abatement on the construction materials. Do you know what that number is?
You know, I could probably figure it out, and I don't have it right in front of me.
Huh?
I don't have it right in front of me.
Okay.
I apologize for that.
I guess I would just ask that that be included going forward.
Sure.
Because that is something that we're including as part of this.
It is, I do know it is part of our cost benefit analysis, so the numbers do include that in there.
Right. And I recognize that. I would just like to have that number for transparency.
I can get that to you.
Thank you.
He has it.
Oh, fantastic.
Only the best work for the city.
Read the fine print here. Sales tax exemption valued is at $224,684.
Total or annually? I guess it'd be total, right?
The estimated value, yeah, it's construction sales tax.
Thank you.
Councilmember, do you have a follow-up? Further questions for staff? See none, thank you. Is there input from the public? Morning,
Mayor
welcome.
Whipple. Good morning, council members. Good to see you again. Thanks for having me. I'm Adam Pogue, Spirit Aerosystems Vice President for Manufacturing Services. Thanks for an opportunity to share a little bit. I've prepared just a couple of slides. Okay. So this is just representation of what that expansion would look like. We have already filled up all of the space that the Air Capital Flight Line team put in place for us. Now that we're seeing good recovery out of the pandemic and post 737 MAX grounding, we see the rates heading back in the right direction in terms of what we need to continue to meet our commitments and increase employment, but it drives expansion to the building itself, which is a good thing. Okay? Here you see the employment review and overlook in terms of what had occurred at Spirit with the grounding and COVID, and now in recovery. We do see some significant net job growth for 2021 through 2024, over 4,600 new jobs estimated between now and then for a total employment at the Wichita campus of over 12,600 employees. Okay. It's been 5 years since I came in front of this group and talked about our plan for expansion and diversification and so forth, as well as a commitment for spend from a capital standpoint. I'm happy to say that due to a lot of the automation that we put in place, recovery from COVID, expansions just like this, that we have met our commitments of over $1.1 billion of spend, and by the end of the year 2021, we will exceed that by about another $500,000. Okay. That hasn't come and it won't come for the next 3 years in particular without a lot of work as it relates to recruitment and hiring, and working very closely with everyone around us. We are right in the middle of our summer intern program. We actually have over 95 college students working with us hand in hand through the course of the summer here at our Wichita facility. And we have intent to launch even extended micro intern programs inclusive of high school students, introducing them to the manufacturing environment, as well as partnering with Workforce Alliance. Okay. And there you see the representation of what that capital investment looks like from 2016 through our estimates by year-end 2021 for a total of $1.354 billion, again, slightly exceeding our projection and our commitment that we made in 2016. Okay. A lot of that is through the advancement of automation. We still do a lot of things manual at this 75-year-old facility, but fortunately over the course of the last 10 years, due to rate increases and technologies that come along, we have been able to introduce a lot of new automation, including automated floor beam assembly lines and something we refer to as curved panel assembly, which is very significant in terms of quality improvements and ergonomic improvements on our panel buildups for 737 and 767 tanker. Okay? And that's it. Happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions?
Thank you so much.
Sir. Further comments from the public? All right, if there is none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Further discussion? There is no further discussion, then I'll make the motion to take staff's recommended action to close the public hearing, adopt a resolution of intent, and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, excuse me, this was in District 3. I apologize. Would you like to speak to your second?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mayor.
Of course.
I had an opportunity to tour the facility last week. It was an eye-opening experience. I'm very proud of what I saw out there. I'd never been that up close to those fuselages and those nose cones before, so I'm very excited about Spirit calling Wichita home and staying in Wichita, and we thank you so much for that opportunity. So I'm excited about the addition of employees as well, high-paying jobs, and yes, that's it. I'm excited about this and look forward to seeing Spirit in Wichita for a long time to come.
Motion has been made and seconded. Clerk will open the roll. Result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Public hearing and resolution of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds, MWCB LLC.
Welcome.
Again, Scott Rigby, City Manager's Office, here today to talk about Smart Factory, so I'll attempt to be smart here. This is out at the WSU's Innovation Campus. This is regarding Deloitte choosing Wichita as a place to set up a flag for operation. So MWCB, which is a local development group, which is controlled by Ivan Crossland and Steve Barrett, are managing members of that group, and they build a number of buildings out at Innovation Campus, and one of them is this 53,000 square foot building out at the Innovation Campus. Of that 53,000 square feet, 40,000 will be leased for Deloitte for their smart factory at Wichita. And we do have representatives from Deloitte, actually virtually, so if you have questions about the smart factory, I'm going to defer to them. But Deloitte is headquartered out of New York, they do a multiple number of things, from consulting to finance to tax to this effort, which is smart manufacturing. Here's a map of Innovation Campus highlighted. You see in the circle there is the new smart factory building. I believe some of you have been out to that facility in recent days or weeks. If not, we can find a way to get you out there to see about that. The request today is for a $20 million industrial revenue bond letter of intent request. This would be for a sales tax exemption on Deloitte tenant finishes for about $14 million and a property tax abatement for the Deloitte space only. So not the entire building, just for the Deloitte space only. This would be for hire a minimum of 15 employees at a minimum salary of $100,000. The shell building was constructed in 2020. It was valued at $5 million at that time for the county appraiser. That generates $145,638 in property tax. Consequently, this effort will create a payment in lieu or pilot equal to that base valuation for the building of $145,638. So the city will continue to receive that for the duration of the tax abatement. For the space occupied by the other tenants, which is roughly the remaining 20% of the building, There'll be a second pilot that will, hopefully as the building increases, will adjust based on that annual increase. Here's the value of the 1 year 100% tax abatement. Cost benefit analysis, 1.45 to 1, and on down as you see there. And just a couple comments before we get to the recommendation. The Deloitte Smart Factory is a unique facility, and I'll let them speak to that. I think Steve Laper is on a virtual situation, but the Smart Factory is a unique opportunity. It's not just a facility for Deloitte, it's really an opportunity for Deloitte to partner with WSU and the community to bring in both national, international, as well as local businesses who are involved in manufacturing, how to, I'll call it reimagine manufacturing for, I'll call it the next generation of manufacturing or smart manufacturing. So not only is it an opportunity for have Deloitte in our community, but it's also an opportunity for Deloitte to welcome in their clients as well as to partner with us and our partners such as Greater Wichita Partnership and the Chamber and others to have an opportunity to get in front of those companies to explore the opportunity. Is there an opportunity for those companies who are visiting Wichita to go to the Smart Factory to also consider Wichita as a location either for their business or to conduct business with our local area businesses? So we think this is an important project, not just because of Deloitte staking a flag in Wichita, which is fantastic, but also for the opportunity for the exposure for Wichita. So with that, it's staff recommendation that the City Council close the public hearing, adopt a resolution of intent, and authorize the necessary signatures. Steve Laper with Deloitte is in the cloud right now and is happy to make any comments or questions.
Yes, we will.
Happy to answer any questions at this point.
First, is there questions for staff? Then we go to the public, and then we'll recognize the person who's on digital or video. No questions at this time for staff. Let's recognize public input, at which the tech team will bring someone in. Welcome.
Hello, this is Stephen Lopper from Deloitte. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, sir. The floor is yours. Welcome.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of the City Council. My name is Stephen Lopper, and I'm a leader at Deloitte Consulting and on the operations team involved with bringing the Smart Factory to the city of Wichita, and specifically to the Innovation Campus at Wichita State University. I had hoped to be with you today in Wichita. However, due to some unanticipated travel complications yesterday, I was unable to successfully arrive in Wichita before today's meeting. I had the privilege to meet many of you over the course of last week, and looking forward to connecting with the remaining members at the site where we showcased and will continue to showcase the capabilities and impact of the now under construction Smart Factory. The Smart Factory at Wichita is expected to offer an opportunity in which the digital, physical, and experimental come together so companies can experience the advanced manufacturing methods and technologies at the heart of transformation. The new cutting-edge facility will help companies better understand how to merge existing technologies with new innovations and create dialogue about how companies can take the first steps to create sustainable investments. Smart manufacturing is an evolving and dynamic topic, one that our center will help industry leaders understand and further evolve. We are committed to bringing new educational resources, experiences, and opportunities to the vibrant Wichita community as we work closely with Wichita State University to bring the Smart Factory at Wichita to life. The factory, which will be open to local business leaders, educators, students, as well as multinational organizations from around the United States and from around the world, will provide access to next-generation smart factory technologies, equipping the Wichita community with tools and knowledge to build the workforce of the future, and enable organizations of all sizes to transform their go forward manufacturing capabilities. One of our very first factory initiatives will involve the production of STEM education kits, which will be donated to Wichita area schools. With sustainability top of mind, the soon-to-be operational net zero impact factory in total features 60,000 square feet of sustainable space. We look forward to continuing our active engagement with the local community and advancing Wichita as a technology and innovation center. Thank you for your consideration, and we look forward to advancing our plans for the Smart Factory at Wichita.
Thank you, sir. Further public input? You're welcome.
Good morning. Andrew Nave, Greater Wichita Partnership, 501 East Douglas Avenue. Thank you, Mayor and members of the council, for allowing me to make some very brief comments. Wanted to provide just a couple of reminders about the significance and the impact of this project and this request and your support for it. Not the least of which is raising our profile. Having Stephen Lopper join us digitally. I know he really wanted to make it in town this morning, but was stuck in Dallas at the airport. But having Deloitte's presence both here physically and going on to the future is significant. I don't need to tell you all about the presence that our community already has and the reputation our community already has in manufacturing. We're recognized worldwide as a manufacturing region and manufacturing metro. Brookings Institute ranks us as that. We continue to win awards for one of the best and places to work in manufacturing. That will only continue and improve and enhance with the Smart Factory. Not the least of which is having a firm like Deloitte and have their corporate profile in our community. We are very proud that we have Koch Industries and Cargill, the top two firms in Forbes' list of the largest privately held firms in America. Now we will have the third. Deloitte is the number 3 ranked Forbes top private firm in the country. So significantly raises our profile, enhances our economic development strategies, the regional growth plan, which you all supported, and the framework for growth plan, both highlight, both prioritize smart manufacturing, advances in Industry 4.0, where our manufacturers in our region can take steps forward to innovate and add technology onto the shop floor. This will do that faster and better than really anything else and any other strategy that we could deploy. I very much appreciate your consideration. I know many of you are getting your hands around it. Manager Layton has well said that this is not widely understood across the community. We, as the partnership, are helping to step into that. I am confident that having the Smart Factory in our community will only enhance that further, that the understanding of the need for technology in our manufacturing spaces is paramount. So again, appreciate your guys' consideration of this morning, and thank you very much.
Further public comment? See no, we just bring the discussion back to the bench. Further discussion? See none with that, I'll recognize the Vice Mayor as this resides in District 1.
Thanks, Mayor. As Andrew said, this is a pretty cool development and opportunity for the city of Wichita. And as we've talked about diversifying our economy over the years, this is another opportunity that could bring the technology and ability to continue to grow and diversify our economy. And it's exciting that it's going on Innovation Campus. That campus has changed so much. So I am honored to make the motion that City Council close the public hearing, adopt the resolution, and authorize the necessary signatures.
I'll second the motion. Motion has been made by the Vice Mayor and seconded. Clerk, open the roll. Members cast the vote. Result of 7 yeas, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Building facade improvements, project closeout, 500 South Topeka.
Good morning, Mayor, members of City Council. Mark Elder with the Office of Economic Development. The item today before you is the first of 3 facade projects that will be closing out this year. This is 500 South Topeka. It's the former Topeka Street Firehouse, now Fireworks. The facade project was approved back in September of 2019, and at that time, the city established a maximum assessment of $170,000 for the project, with the overall total project cost for the developer of $1 million. This project did include the acquisition and rehabilitation of 500 South Topeka into a shared office and makerspace. The improvements included new windows and doors, power washing, awnings, and additional work to restore the building to meet code requirements. They also did a lot of cool things where they took the doors that were on the fire truck entrance side, used those as dividers on the interior of the building. This is an aerial of the building at 500 South Topeka. It's right at the southeast intersection of Topeka and Lewis. This is the image of the north facade before the facade program and afterwards with the cleaning, some new entryway and the signs. And you can really see a stark difference here on the west side of the building before the facade program and afterwards with the new doors or window replacements, awnings, signage on that. So when this project was approved back in 2019, the estimated project costs were $175,000. And when you include the additional costs in the grant, the maximum assessment was $170,000. The project being complete came in at $146,692. Which with that, the admin fee and the other costs all were reduced, which brings down the maximum assessment to $134,000. With the approval of this and the other two facades that we presented to you today, the grant balance that is available for future facade projects will be $61,000. The way the facade program works is that the City Council adopts an upfront maximum budget to go out and do the improvements. And then when those project is complete, when those costs come in below the maximum assessment, we need to go back in and adjust that to make sure that the assessments are accurately reflect the costs associated with the project. And so that's what we're doing now, reducing that assessment to equal the final cost, but does require amending that assessment ordinance. After this, the next step would be to assign special assessments against this property, but the interest rate will still be set at the bond sale. They will be repaid back over a 15-year period. And another step that we do is the last year's debt service is actually financed into this financing as a protection against the city if there's ever a non-payment of those special assessments. So basically that last year, the 15th year, is actually paid by the debt service reserve, and the developer only pays 14 years. It is still secured by a tax lien against the property, however. The developer was not able to be here today, but they did want to express to the council their continued support of the arena neighborhood that they're in, as well as this project in particular, and just wanted to thank you for your time and commitment to that area. I'll stand for any questions.
Questions of staff? See none, thank you. Is there input from the public? See none. We'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there discussion on the item? If there's no discussion, Chair will recognize Vice Mayor Johnson, as this resides in District 1.
Thanks, Mayor. This project looks really good. I believe it was our first Opportunity Zone project in Wichita.
That's my understanding, yes.
So it looks great. And I appreciate the work that Bruce and his team continue to do down in the area to make it look better. With that, I would move that the City Council approve the final statement of cost to place the ordinance on first reading and authorize the necessary signatures.
I'll second. Motion is made by the Vice Mayor and then seconded. Clerk will open the roll. Members cast the votes. Having received 78 votes, the motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Building Facade Improvements Project Closeout, 1700 East Douglas.
Welcome.
Hello, Mark Elder again, Office of Economic Development. This is the second of the three projects we'll be closing out today at 1700 East Douglas. This project was approved back in February of 2020, and the original maximum assessment for this project was $185,000. The total project costs were just under $1.7 million for this project. This was just rehabilitation of the building. The current owners are still there, but it was part of an overall rehab to actually make improvements to the exterior for sound and energy efficiency, but also to make the interior of the building more efficient to allow them to hire additional staff to support the company. The facade improvements included the brick and masonry repair and tuck pointing, window and door replacement, as well as on the west side of the building, they added some roll-up doors on the second floor of the west facade to allow for an open space for their staff to take breaks and to gather. This project did include any additional work they needed to restore the building to meet code requirements. This is an aerial photo of the building at the northeast corner of Douglas and Hydraulic. And this is the before photo of the building. At that time, it still had the cars on the second floor, but it had some of the near original windows that were single pane and not very efficient, as well as that entrance. So they replaced those windows, did a little bit of cleanup on the facade. And then on the west side here, you can see the before with some of those still aluminum clad windows and the entrance the way it was. So they were able to make some improvements to the entrance on this side for ADA compatibility. And you can see those two windows on the south side have been replaced, and those are the ones that can roll up to open up some of that space on the inside to make some better amenities for their staff. This one, the original project cost were $187,000, and the actual cost came in at $176,000. So with that, with the grant improvements, the final maximum assessment will be $171,340. Again, this project had the cost come in below the approved maximum amount, and so we're asking for an amendment to the assessment ordinance to equal those final costs. This project will again have the assessments spread against the building, with the interest rate set at bonds over a 15-year period was secured by the tax lien against that property. With that, I will stand for any questions.
Questions for staff? See none. Input from the public? See none. Discussion back to the bench. Is there any discussion on the item? There's no discussion on the item. Then Chair recognizes Vice Mayor Johnson as this resides in District 1.
Thanks, Mayor. This improvement project looks really good as well. Glad to see the improvements and happy for the business there. With that, I would move that the City Council approve the final statement of cost, place the ordinance on first reading, and authorize the necessary signatures.
I'll second that. Motion has been made and then seconded. Clerk will open the roll. Members cast the votes. Having received 7 yeas, the motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Building Facade Improvements Project Closeout, 1029 West Douglas.
Sir? Nope. Good morning. This will be the last facade project for today. It's at 1029 West Douglas. That would be at the intersection of Douglas and Seneca. This project was approved in 2019 with a maximum assessment of $235,000. The total investment by the building owner was $1.4 million. This project did include the acquisition as well as the rehabilitation of the project, but included the removal of the stucco that was on that and restoring the building back to the original brick facade that was underneath. And you'll see that this is probably one of the most drastic changes you'll see of today's facades. But did also include the window and door replacement and any work that was needed to meet building and code requirements. This is an aerial of the building at Seneca and Douglas. And this is the before photo right there on that intersection as you go into Delano. And this is what it looks like today with the improvements in restoring it back to that brick facade. Here's the northwest corner where you can see both the west and the north sides of the building. And again, you can see they're bringing that building back to the brick facades and replacing those windows on that. The original project had $213,000, came in just below the original approved at $213,000, but with some adjustments and the reason you see the big jump in the change in the financing costs is we can adjust those down with more accurate numbers on the cost that would be associated with the financing, which brings the maximum assessment to $211,597. Again, this project did have the maximum assessment come in a little bit lower than, or the final assessment come in slightly lower than the maximum, and so therefore we're asking for an ordinance amendment, change it in that assessing ordinance. The specials will be spread against the property with the bond rate set up by the sale with a 15-year financing secured by the property. I will stand for any questions on this one as well.
All right, questions for staff? See no questions. Input from the public? See none. Bring discussion. Excuse me. Discussion back to the bench. Is there any discussion on the item? If there is none, the chair recognizes Councilmember Bubag as this resides in District 4.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm pleased.
Councilmember, is your mic on? My apologies. I want to make sure you're being recorded.
Thank you, sir. Just want to thank them for this project and approve the final statement of cost, place the ordinance on first reading, and authorize the necessary signatures.
Now I'll second the motion. So with that, clerk will open the roll. Members cast the vote. Having received 7 yeas, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Capital Improvement Design Agreements for bridge, multiple arterial streets, water main dead-end extensions, and water main replacements.
Welcome, sir.
Morning, Mayor, Council members, Gary Jansen, Public Works Engineering. The item before you this morning is a request for approval of design agreements and various levels of funding for 14 transportation-related and water utility capital improvement projects. In April and May of this year, the Staff Screening and Selection Committee interviewed firms that responded to requests for design services on a variety of capital projects, including a bridge replacement, arterial street improvements, water main replacements, and water main dead-end elimination extensions. Selections were made for these projects as shown on the agenda report and what's also shown there is the design concept fees. Take a quick look at the paving and bridge projects. There's a total of 5. Starting at the top end of this, the short street section that's running east to west is 29th Street North from I-135 to some point probably around St. Francis, certainly west of Mosley. This area has seen significant and rapid growth, commercial growth just in the last year. Especially with companies like Johnson Controls expanding, Airxcel adding jobs. Conco Construction is expected to double in size in a very short period of time. On the south side, Dole has grown significantly. It's put a lot of stress on the intersection of 29th and Ohio in particular. In fact, within the last 6 to 9 months, staff went in and did some things from a maintenance perspective to make improvements to that intersection, just to help with a significant increase in truck traffic in the meantime until we can get to this project. So it will include a lot of public input from those businesses, working closely with the city manager's office and others. It's a project that we want to move forward on as soon as we possibly can. Going just below that on 21st Street North, also in that same area from 135 to St. Francis, will be improvements to 21st Street to complement significant development that's also happening in that area and an expected increase in truck traffic also with spec warehouses coming to the area, a large truck center, and a few other different types of businesses within that commercial development. To the bottom, going down just from there and to the left is the Amidon Street Bridge at approximately 18th Street North over the Big Arkansas River. This is one of the few bridges in our system that is structurally deficient. Project will include significant rehabilitation or replacement of that bridge. And then down towards the bottom of this map is actually 2 separate projects along the West Street corridor from 235 to MacArthur and then MacArthur to 47th Street South. The city manager mentioned in his presentation about the budget and the CIP the significance of this West Street corridor. We are currently finishing or just finished up work primarily on West Street from Kellogg to Harry. We are well into design of improvements to West Street at Pawnee and K42, which will be under construction in 2023 to 2024. The expansion improvements of this area of West Street south of 235 is necessary. Community investments plan shows significant expected growth, one of the biggest job growth areas in the city, with continued commercial and industrial expansion of businesses and a lot of truck traffic. So this would definitely be a good improvement for that area. Total for these projects is $25 million in LST funds, with the projects to be constructed between 2022 and 2025. At this time, we're just asking for design funding only. Moving on to look at the water utility, this map is a little bit hard to see. The darker blue lines, which are primarily to the west, are what we call the dead-end extensions. As the city grows and we continue to extend utilities to serve those areas, we end up in a lot of areas where the water mains in particular have to dead end. It's just the way the development goes. And at some point in time, as more areas are annexed into the city, we look for opportunities to connect our system to make redundant loops. It provides for enhanced system performance. It provides for better service to our customers. It minimizes the amount of shutdown time if and when certain portions of our system need to be shut down for maintenance. It's very good use of the funding that's included within the current rates. This is $13 million. We'll have no rate impact. All the projects will be built from 2021 to 2027. The light blue areas that are square areas, those are neighborhood water main replacements. Those also do a lot for system enhancement and performance and providing a quality product to our citizens. So we've got a total of 14 projects, approximately $28 million in total investments by the time all these projects are constructed. The proposed initial agreements between the city and the consultants provide for the development of design concepts, again, for the 1 bridge, 4 arterial street projects, 5 dead-end elimination water mains, and then the final design for 4 water main replacement projects. Those first, with the bridge, the arterial streets, and the 5 dead-end elimination projects will come back to the council at a later date for approval of design concepts and final design agreements. Funding for the design agreements for 21st Street North specifically and 29th Street North are included in the 2022-2031 proposed capital improvement program and is requested at this time so that we can move forward with design and be ready for construction as soon as possible. The construction funding for both projects is included in the proposed CIP for 2022 and 23. Starting design now will let us stay on that schedule, hopefully. Funding for all other projects is available from previously City Council approved project budgets. With that, staff recommends City Council approve the design agreements and budgets, adopt the resolutions, and authorize necessary signatures, and I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Questions of staff? See none. Input from the public? See none. We'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there discussion on the item? If there's no discussion on the item, then Chair will recognize Councilmember Claycomb as part of this project falls into District 6.
Thank you. I move that we approve the design agreements and budgets, waive City Council Policy 2 regarding the use of project savings to allow the transfer of funds, adopt the resolutions, and authorize the necessary signatures.
Is there a second? Second has been made by the Vice Mayor. Clerk will open the roll. Members cast a vote. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Chester I. Lewis Reflection Park Project, Public Art.
Welcome, sir.
Good morning, Mayor, Council. Troy Hellman, Director of Parks and Recreation. So the item I have for you today is in regards to Chester I. Lewis Reflection Park. We've been working on this project for a while in regards to making some upgrades with the partnership that we have with the medical school that's right next to it. So a little bit of background, the Chester I. Lewis Reflection Square project is being redesigned, and it's obviously named for a prominent local civil rights leader. The park is going to serve as an entry for the Kansas Health Science Center, which is being built right now. It's going to be a great outdoor space that's going to have a gathering space to support not only the folks from the medical school, but also from the surrounding community as well. So on November 12th, the City Council approved an agreement that was a TIF of $1.3 million, which includes $100,000 that's going to be going to the public art, which we'll talk about next in the next presentation. On June 7th, the Design Council recommended an additional $150,000 be placed in the budget for this project to support the art and the artists that we have brought on to this project. Some additional good news. On June 28th, the Wichita Parks Foundation signed an agreement for a $250,000 donation to this project as well, which includes $150,000 from the Downtown Development Corporation. So we're just making this project even better as we move forward. So adopted in the CIP, public art, there's a whole item in regards to public art that supports CIP projects, and this is supported by the City Ordinance 51-165. So we anticipate this being supported in this project as well. So this funding is usually pushed out throughout the 10 years, and the Design Council helps identify certain projects to support not only CIP projects, but certain special projects that they deemed, and this is one of those projects. So the financial considerations. Staff recommends allocating the $150,000 project consent from the Design Council recommendations. In addition to the CIP allocations, the Wichita Park Foundation's pledge of $250,000 to increase the project, which again, $150,000 of that is coming from the downtown Wichita, and the other $100,000 is coming from the Plates for Parks through the Wichita Parks Foundation. So the Law Department has reviewed and approved the agreement and the bonding resolution as to form, and has recommended that the City Council approve the donor agreement, increase the project budget, approve the revised bonding resolution, and authorize the necessary signatures. I'm available for questions.
Any questions of staff? There's none. Is there input from the public? Sir, welcome.
Thank you. Jesse Juma, 67502. One thing we left out is that Chester Lewis was born and raised in Hutchinson, Kansas. And so I just wanted to bring to the awareness of the council and the people that are working on the project that we actually have also recognized a little plaza in Hutchinson, just right off of Main Street, Chester I. Lewis Plaza, back in Hutch. Just here to not, having any resolutions or answers today, but I just wanted to open the conversation of perhaps something we can do to some kind of cohesiveness with these two parks. I think it's an interesting opportunity for Hutchinson and Wichita to maybe work together on something too. It kind of helps with I don't know, bringing things together between Hutch and Wichita. So I'm just here to open a conversation, and like I said, perhaps I can get some contacts later as I leave to maybe put some kind of, if the very least, some kind of recognition, like in both sites, that for the continuing story, here's what Chester Lewis did in Wichita, Kansas. Or from the Wichita site, maybe to see where Chester Lewis was born, visit the site in Hutchinson, Kansas, kind of thing, to kind of, we're honoring the same man. So I was thinking we should follow that story, from where he began to where he came. And I think it's just a good reflection on whole between the city of Hutchinson and the city of Wichita. I'm sure we've had other residents and that, we have traffic, people working back and forth between Hudson and Wichita, so it's just another way that recognizing Mr. Lewis can help, with that too, just to show how the two towns are actually pretty close, and we actually, I think economy-wise, we help each other. I mean, you know how that all works, so that's all I'm trying to look for is just open that conversation, and perhaps we can work, at the very most, if whatever aesthetics are going on in the park, maybe we can continue that back in Hutchinson too, at the very most. But like I said, at the very least, get some kind of recognition between the two sites. Thank you.
Other public input? There is none. We'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there any discussion on this item from the bench?
Mr. Mayor, I just want to recognize the hard work of Jeff Floor to raise the funds privately, $150,000 to complement what the Park Foundation has come up with. Without that, we wouldn't have been able to move forward. It was a substantial effort.
Councilmember Tuttle.
Thank you, and I just want to recognize the gentleman who came from Hutchinson. Thank you for traveling here today and for making your comment. I think park staff would probably be more than willing to look into that, but just appreciate you having us on your radar and your willingness to partnership. So safe travels home.
To add to that, we're in design right now, but there's a lot of items that we could do in regards to programming. And I think that's going to be an opportunity from what this gentleman has brought to our attention, is that we'll be able to recognize a lot of the history with a lot of the programming that's going to be going on in the park as well. So right now we're talking about design, but there's definitely a lot of opportunities for programming.
Further discussion? Public, staff, or from the council? See none. With that, I will recognize Vice Mayor Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. This is an exciting project. I had actually heard about the Hutchinson site, so hopefully we can get contact information there. But this has been a great learning experience as well, sitting down with the family of Mr. Lewis and local NAACP and other community leaders to learn the type of giant that Chester Lewis was and the work that he did. I think the art that we have seen thus far in the final product will definitely be deserving of his name. I'm excited about that and definitely thankful to Jeff Fleur and the Parks Foundation for helping out with funding. So with that, I would move that the City Council approve the donor agreement, increase the project budget, approve the revised bonding resolution, and authorize the necessary signatures.
I'll second. So with that, clerk will open the roll. Members cast a vote. Receiving 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Chester I. Lewis Reflection Park Project, artist contracts.
Good morning,
Good
City
morning.
Council members. This is the continuation of our Chester I. Lewis project, but this time we'll be talking about the artist contracts. So as we mentioned, the park is being redesigned and expanded, named after our really great late prominent local civil rights leader. The park will serve as an entry plaza to the Kansas Health Science Center and kind of increase as a vibrant public outdoor space in downtown. The analysis of this, on June 7, the Design Council recommended that the project be designated as a special considerations project. An art consultant was selected at the beginning of the project, and 2 artists have been selected since to create and install public art in the space with a focus on honoring the legacy of Chester I. Lewis. The artists were selected after a national request for proposal was issued, and from the direction of the Design Council, the artists are integrated into the project for maximum exposure of the art elements. 2 artists have been selected, one on a local level, Ella Monique Bacchus. The scope of her work is for the ground floor plan of the park, including features such as decorative tiles, and that contract is for $120,000. And then Matthew Mazzato was selected at the national level. His scope of work includes design elements such as lighting, historical features, and other unique artistic elements for $350,000. And the remaining $30,000 from this budget will be used as a contingency in the case of unanticipated costs. The art allocation of the project totals $500,000 based on staff recommendations and your approval just minutes ago of the revised bonding ordinance. The agreement has been reviewed and approved as to form by law. And based on City Code Section 2.15.080, artists are hired either by the project architect or the project art consultant. Contracting directly with artists is an exception to City Code, as we are suggesting here, but approval of this exception is recommended since the art process on this project was in progress prior to the approval of City Council's code on January 7th of last year. It is recommended that City Council approve the exception to City Code for direct hiring of artists, approve the contracts, and authorize the necessary signatures. Stand for questions.
Questions for staff? See none. Input from the public? See none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there discussion on this item? There's no further discussion. The chair will recognize Vice Mayor Johnson as this resides in District 1.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I make my motion, just want to thank Bob and Troy and staff. I know we had some struggles early on, so I appreciate you getting us to this point. One of the things we had heard was having a local artist, and seeing Ella on here and the work that she did on 9th Street, I think is just a wonderful example of what can happen in the Reflection Square. Haven't met Matthew, seen some examples, and those look great as well. So again, really excited about the potential with this project. And again, thank you to staff for helping get us to this point. With that, I would move that the City Council approve the exception to City Code Section 2.15.080 for directly hiring of artists, approve the contracts, and authorize the necessary signatures.
And I will second. Is there any discussion? If no discussion on the motion, clerk will open the roll. Members cast the vote. Result of 7 yeas, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
PUD 2021-10, city zone change from single-family residential to planned unit development for the Wynn Senior Village development located approximately 370 feet west of North Oliver Avenue on East 15th Street North at 4640 East 15th Street North.
Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Scott Wadle from the Planning Department. This case is a request for custom zoning. It is being presented today because the DAB and the MAPC recommendations are different. This application is similar to one that was submitted late last year but was later withdrawn by the applicant. The major difference this time is that this one does not request the ability to operate a restaurant or to have alcohol at the site. The site is a former school near 15th Street in Oliver. It is approximately 5 acres in size and currently zoned SF5 single-family residential. The applicant proposes to develop the site for multifamily housing, exclusively for individuals 55 years and older. The development would include on-site community gathering space, community personal care services, personal improvement services, general office space, and an in-house facility management personnel. As proposed, it would not have any type of state licensed nursing or residential care. The existing school building would be renovated and become the space for the community gathering events, personal services, and offices. The applicant proposes to build 2 apartment buildings on the north portion of the site. I'll show you an image that shows the proposed layout. The applicant has applied for the custom zoning as part of a planned unit development. The custom zoning would allow the uses permitted in the MF18 multifamily zoning district, in addition to personal care services, personal improvement services, and general office. The PUD specifies the amount of required parking, sets the building height limitations at 2 stories, requires screening and landscaping, including along the north and east boundaries of the property, and limits the amount of signage. The surrounding properties are zoned SF5 single-family residential. In terms of meetings and review, on June 17th, the public hearing for this item was held at the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission voted 11-0 to recommend approval subject to staff comments. Several members of the public spoke in opposition. They indicated concerns with the appropriateness of the proposed uses at the location and the proposed design. On July 12th, DAB 1 considered the application and voted to recommend denial 6-0. Several members of the public spoke against the application at that meeting. No protest petitions were received for this case. The recommended action is to adopt the findings of the MAPC, approve the recommended zone change, place the ordinance on the first reading, authorize the necessary signatures, and publish the ordinance after approval on the second reading. This requires a simple majority of 4 of 7 votes. Alternatives include the following. You can accept the recommendation of the DAB and override the MAPC, so it requires 5 of 7 votes, or you can return the application to the MAPC, which requires a simple majority of 4 of 7 votes. And with that, I'll take you through some images and maps to show you the site. So here's the site outlined in red. Here's the zoning. You can see it is zoned SF5 and surrounded by SF5. Here's the map from the comprehensive plan showing future uses proposed as commercial. Here's the site plan submitted by the applicant. You can see the 2 apartment buildings to the north and the existing school building on the south end of the property. Here's photos of the site, so the existing school building. This is the northern portion of the site. These are homes across the street to the west, homes across the street to the south, and the aerial. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Questions for staff? So just to review, the DAB was against this, and then folks from the community showed up at the meeting with the MAPC and was also against this. Did community folks show up who were for this?
No, sir.
So what was the I guess, what was the discussion to pass it, to pass the change if the community has shown to be against it? What was
Yes.
the discussion?
I think for the MAPC's considerations, it was simply about highest and best use, that it was a residential use with additional uses with it, but I think they focused on the residential uses.
Further discussion for staff? Councilmember Tuttle.
Scott, great. Thank you for being here. I was reading over the DAB minutes, and just kind of maybe walk me through so make sure I understand and anyone who's listening understands. So it's going to be multi-level. It's not just going to be single story like it is now. It seemed like that was a concern. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
Okay.
They're proposing 2 stories for the apartment buildings.
So I think 2 comments were regarding the height of, and changing the characteristic of the neighborhood. What else? Can you maybe just kind of give any other summaries or thoughts? Like I said, I read the minutes, but just to make sure I'm understanding.
I would say that there's
Thank
there's a significant focus also on the addition of the non-residential uses to the neighborhood, and I believe that that's been something that's come up from community members questioning whether it's appropriate to have those uses within the neighborhood, because this is not run up against an arterial street. This is located a block within the neighborhood. The other issue that's come up has been, it's not necessarily a land use issue, but it's something that residents did cite and bring up, which was performance history of the owner of the property and proposed developer.
Further comments from staff? Thank you. I'll have discussion from the bench. Or discussion on this item. Councilmember Johnson, or excuse me, Vice Mayor Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. We did have lively discussion at the District Advisory Board meeting. And I have talked to the developer as well and tried to look at how this would work in the community and neighborhood. Based off of all of that, I would move that the City Council overturn the recommendation of the MAPC and deny the zone change request for PUD 2021-0010 for the following findings that we have. The area surrounding the site is uniform in development, predominantly 1-story single-family homes in SF5, single-family residential zoning. The nearest structures taller than a single story are located at Del Rose and 13th Street, which is a quarter mile south of the subject property, as you can see in the area. Given this is developed with single-family homes, the proposed multifamily development and commercial uses of personal care services, personal improvement services, and general offers are out of character with the neighborhood. In addition to that, the property is zoned SF5, single-family residential. Without changing the zoning, the property can be replatted into single-family lots and developed into a cohesive manner with the surrounding neighborhood, which is also in alignment with the neighborhood supports and tried to work toward in good faith with the developer. The proposed development will likely cause an increase in traffic, noise, and light pollution, affecting the values of the immediate houses surrounding the property. And though the application was not officially protested, a significant number of neighborhood residents provided written and verbal comment to MAPC, District Advisory Board, and I believe all of us received letters from residents in the area on the City Council. In addition to that, the District Advisory Board unanimously recommended denial of the project. And for those reasons, I move that we deny this as well.
Second the motion. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, clerk will open the roll. Members cast the vote. With a result of 7 yeas, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Rental assistance demonstration conversion commitment.
Welcome, Director Stang.
Good morning. Good morning. Sally Stang with the Housing and Community Services Department. For the record, I'm really excited to be here today for this item. We are moving forward with our RAD project for our senior units. So just as a reminder, the rental assistance demonstration is what HUD calls a pilot program. It's been around about 8 years. But it allows public housing agencies to convert their public housing portfolio units from the public housing platform to a Section 8 contract. The primary benefit of doing that is it allows us to secure private funding in order to do rehabilitation on the buildings. Under public housing, the project is not allowed to secure any type of debt. The project itself is 226 units that are contained at 4 locations. So Greenway Manor, 86 units, 90 units at McLean Manor, 32 units at Rosa Gregg Garden Apartments, and 18 units at Bernice Hutchinson. The project has grown to a $35 million project, and we have had to secure many sources of financing to make this happen, including using 4% tax credits, a HUD 221D4 loan, a seller's note for the property, home funds, capital funds, CDBG, HUD rehab assistance, housing development, housing trust funds from the state. Took quite a bit to pull the funding together to make this happen. The project scope hasn't really changed since the beginning of the project, but it does include many improvements to the properties, including exterior doors and windows, new HVAC, water heaters that are much more energy efficient, electrical system upgrades, ADA improvements, modifications of bathrooms, sprinkler systems, fire systems, upgrades to the community centers, education and meeting space, landscaping, elevators, all kinds of improvements. We're even partnering with SCED, the South Central Kansas Economic Development District, to replace windows to further meet energy efficiency in Greenway Manor. At the Garden Apartments, very similar scope, although, the needs in garden-style apartments and high-rises are a little bit different, but again, HVAC systems, water heaters, electrical systems, kitchens, plumbing. We are adding ADA accessible ramps to the basements of the community centers for disasters. So the next step, the RAD conversion and the 221D4 loan have been approved by HUD, so that is our huge undertaking to get to this point. We are hoping for a closing the last week of August, which will start construction directly thereafter on the Garden Apartments, the vacant units we have at the Garden Apartments. And we're going to do those in stages, which will allow the residents to remain in their current units while we rehab vacant units at those sites. And then the residents will move only once into a completely rehabbed unit, and then we'll start construction on those newly vacated units. But at the same time, in July and August, tenants at McLean Manor are going to be relocated to Greenway Manor so that construction on McLean can begin shortly after closing, and will take about 10 months. So once that construction is complete, the McLean residents will return to McLean, and we'll offer existing Greenway residents, if they'd like, to only have to move once, could transfer to newly rehabbed units at McLean or the Garden Apartments. If they want to stay at Greenway in the long run, they will be temporarily relocated into private units during construction. And again, construction on Greenway is going to take approximately 10 months. Then those Greenway residents will return to Greenway Manor once construction is complete. All relocation is coordinated through a national relocation coordinator, R.H. Brown and Associates, and all the expenses are paid for by the projects. The residents will continue to complete their income certifications and only pay 30% of their monthly adjusted income for rent, both during construction and after. So HUD has issued a RAD conversion commitment, the RCC, which was attached, and has to be executed within 30 days in order for the project to move forward, to lock the interest rate for the FHA loan, and to schedule the closing. So the RCC is actually a commitment from HUD to move forward and is not the final RAD agreement, which is good because we found a couple of errors in the agreement and bringing those to your attention now. On page 1, that the PHA notice address has the housing office old address on Riverview. We will request for that to be changed. On page 2, the estimated number of months for the completion of work is correct, 23 months, but then it gives a completion deadline of July 13th, 2022. So we are asking for that to be corrected. And then the signature block on page 11 listed myself as the PHA director rather than the board chair, the mayor. So we will be having the mayor sign a revised signature block, but HUD would not allow us to make the other corrections to the existing document. So at this point, on August 10th, we're going to bring several documents back to this body for approval, which will include ground lease documents, organizational and management documents, regulatory documents, the development agreement, guarantee agreement. There's actually 42 total documents that we're working on to get this project to close. So pursuant to the terms of the RCC, the closing will be subject to review by HUD and approval of transactional documents and may require non-substantive corrections or changes to various documents along the way and to the business terms of the RAD conditional conversion commitment as a condition of closing. And we're requesting that the mayor be authorized to approve such corrections and changes by his execution of the final documents. We'll never make it to closing if every minor change has to come back to the council, unfortunately. There is no impact to the general fund, and the execution of the commitment makes no changes to the financial structure of the project. The law department has reviewed the RAD conversion commitment document as to form, and it's recommended that the Wichita Housing Authority Board authorize the execution of the RAD conversion commitment together with such subsequent changes and corrections as may be necessary to complete the proceedings to closing. And I stand for any questions.
Questions for staff? See none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Input from the public? See none. We'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there discussion on the item? Councilmember Claycomb.
Thank you. I have no discussion other than just to say thank you, Sally, and thank you to your staff. I know this has been a big project, and while I know this is public housing for the entire city, all 4 of these units reside in District 6, so appreciate the work that your staff is doing on this. Thank you.
With that, I will make a motion to accept staff's recommended action to authorize execution of the rental assistance demonstration conversion commitment together with such subsequent changes and corrections as may be necessary to complete the proceedings for closing. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second by Vice Mayor. Clerk will open the rolls. Members cast the vote. Receiving 7 votes as a yay, this motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Councilmember appointments and comments.
Are there any appointments at this time that we want to knock out first? Not, is there just any comments for the general good? Not, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Clerk, open the roll. Please. Here we go. Result is 7 yeas. That motion does pass, and we are adjourned. Thank you.